My name is Beatrice, and people often say I look like a quiet old woman who knows nothing about the world anymore. I let them believe that. Before we begin, let me quickly say this. If stories about family betrayal, hidden strength, and unexpected justice touch your heart, please subscribe, like this video, and turn on your notification bell so you never miss stories like this. Also, tell me in the comments which country you are watching from. I want to know who is here with me today. Now listen carefully, because what I am about to tell you changed my family forever. The most shocking moment of my life did not happen in a hospital. It did not happen at a funeral. It happened at my own dining table, when my daughter-in-law leaned back in her chair, smiled, and said words that made my hands shake. She said, "Don't worry about it. You don't decide anything anymore." Everyone laughed. Everyone, except me. I remember the sound of that laugh clearly. It was sharp and careless, like she was stepping on something small and weak. She looked at me the way people look at an old chair they plan to throw away. Her eyes were calm, confident, sure that she had already won. In that moment, she truly believed I was a fool. What she did not know, what no one at that table knew, was that the power she thought she had already taken was still resting quietly in my hands. But to understand why that laugh mattered so much, you need to know how we got there. I am a widow. My husband passed away 6 years ago. He was a careful man. Careful with money. Careful with promises. When he died, people told me my life would become small and lonely. I did not argue. I simply watched. My son married his wife 3 years after his father's death. From the first day she walked into my house, she smiled too much and listened too little. She called me Mom in a sweet voice, but her eyes were always counting things: rooms, furniture, faces, weaknesses. At first, she acted kind. She helped me carry groceries. She asked about my health. She prayed loudly for me at church. People said, "You are lucky to have such a caring daughter-in-law." I smiled and nodded. But kindness that is real does not rush. And hers always felt hurried. Slowly, things changed. My son stopped asking me for advice. Decisions were made without my knowledge. Conversations stopped when I entered the room. Sometimes I would speak, and no one would answer. It felt like standing in a house where your voice no longer echoes. Still, I said nothing. Because I have learned something in this life. People show their true face when they believe you can do nothing. The day everything cracked was a Sunday afternoon. We were sitting at the dining table. Plates were still on the table. My son was scrolling on his phone. My daughter-in-law was speaking loudly, explaining plans for the future. She talked about renovations. She talked about selling land. She talked about moving things around. Things that were not hers. I gently cleared my throat and said, "I don't think that is how your father wanted it." The room went quiet. Then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not a polite one. A confident laugh. She leaned back and said, "Mom, with respect, those things are not really up to you anymore." My son did not look up. That was when she looked straight at me and added, "You've done your part. Now it's time to rest." The word rest sounded like disappear. That was the moment she thought I was finished. The moment she believed the power had shifted completely into her hands. My fingers tightened around my napkin. My heart beat fast, but my face stayed calm. Inside, something woke up. Not anger. Not fear. Clarity. Because while she was laughing, I was remembering something she had forgotten. Something my son did not know. Something my late husband trusted only me with. That night, I did not sleep. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, replaying every word she had said. Every smile. Every little push to move me aside. Then I asked myself one question. What happens when someone who thinks they hold all the power realizes they never did? I went to my drawer and pulled out a small brown envelope. It was old. The edges were soft. Inside were papers I had not looked at in years. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from understanding. Because if I chose to speak, everything would change. If I stayed silent, I would truly become the fool she thought I was. I closed the envelope and whispered, "Not yet. Let them believe I was weak. Let them believe I was finished. Let them believe the house, the future, and the decisions belong to them. For now. Because the most dangerous power is the one no one sees coming." And very soon, she would realize exactly who had been holding it all along. I did not say a word the next morning. That was the first thing that confused her. Usually, after moments like the one at the dining table, people expect tears. They expect anger. They expect complaints whispered into neighbors' ears or phone calls made late at night. I gave her none of that. I woke up early, as I always did. I swept the yard slowly. I made breakfast quietly. I set the table the same way I had done for years. She watched me from the doorway. I could feel her eyes on my back, searching for signs of weakness. She wanted to see if her words had broken me. She wanted proof that I had finally accepted my place. Instead, she saw calm. That made her uncomfortable. "Mom," she said casually, pouring herself tea, "you didn't sleep well, did you?" I smiled gently. "I slept just fine." She raised her eyebrow, but said nothing more. My son kissed her cheek, grabbed his keys, and rushed out for work. He did not look at me. Not once. That hurt more than her laughter the day before, but I swallowed it. Pain, I had learned, could be useful if you knew how to carry it. After they left, the house became quiet again. That was when I took out the envelope. I sat at the small table in my room and placed it in front of me. For a long time, I only stared at it. The paper inside held more than ink. It held years of patience. Years of silence. My husband had always said, "Beatrice, people think power is loud, but real power waits." I opened the envelope slowly. Inside were documents. Signatures. Decisions made long before anyone thought to question my place in this family. As I read, my heart steadied. Because the truth was simple and dangerous at the same time. They were building plans on a foundation they did not own. And the longer they believed I was unaware, the deeper they would dig themselves into trouble. I folded the papers neatly and put them back. Not yet. Over the next few days, my daughter-in-law became bolder. She rearranged furniture without asking. She invited guests without informing me. She spoke about the house as if it already belonged to her. "She's just old," I heard her whisper once on the phone. "She doesn't even understand what's happening." I stood in the hallway and listened. Not because I was hurt, but because I was learning. She underestimated silence. She thought silence meant surrender. She did not know that silence can also be strategy. At dinner one evening, she announced something that made my son finally look up from his plate. "I spoke to someone about the property," she said lightly. "Just to understand our options." My spoon paused mid-air. My son frowned. "What options?" "Oh, nothing serious," she replied quickly. "Just planning ahead." She glanced at me, then added, "Mom doesn't need to worry about things like that anymore." The room went quiet again. This time, I looked directly at my son. "Did your father ever tell you about the house?" I asked softly. He hesitated. "No, why?" Before I could answer, she laughed again. "Oh, please. Everything important was already handled years ago." I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. "Some things were." She smiled, thinking she had won the moment. What she did not realize was that my answer was not agreement. It was a warning. That night, she knocked on my door. This was new. She stepped inside without waiting for permission and closed the door behind her. Her smile was polite, but her eyes were sharp. "I hope there's no misunderstanding," she said. "We all want what's best for the family." "So do I." I replied. She crossed her arms. You've been quiet lately. I've always been quiet. She leaned closer. Just remember, peace comes from knowing when to let go. I looked up at her then. Really looked at her. And for just 1 second, my calm cracked enough for her to notice something else beneath it. Confidence. Her smile faltered. I've already let go of many things in my life, I said. But not everything is meant to be released. She straightened quickly. Of course, she said, forcing a laugh. I just wanted us to understand each other. When she left the room, I knew something had shifted. She felt it too. The next morning, I received a call. It was from an old family friend, someone who had known my husband for decades. I heard there's talk of selling, he said carefully. I closed my eyes. So the whispers have started, I replied. There was a pause. Beatrice. Do they know? No, I said. And they must not. Not yet. After the call, I sat by the window, watching the sunlight crawl across the floor. This was no longer just about respect. This was about control. And control, once tested, demands an answer. That evening, my daughter-in-law made a mistake. A small one. She left papers on the table. Not folded. Not hidden. I recognized the names immediately. My heart beat faster, not from fear, but from confirmation. She was moving faster than she should have. She was reaching for power she did not legally have. And that meant one thing. Time was running out. I picked up the papers, studied them carefully, then placed them back exactly as they were. When she returned and saw them untouched, relief washed over her face. She thought I had not understood. She thought I had not noticed. She thought wrong. That night, I took the envelope out again. This time, I did not hesitate. I removed one document and placed it on the table beside my bed. Tomorrow, I would take the first step. Not to fight. Not to shout. Not to accuse. But to remind everyone in that house of a simple truth. Power does not always sit at the head of the table. Sometimes, it waits quietly in the corner, watching, until the moment comes to stand. And when it does, nothing stays the same. The next morning, I did something that surprised even myself. I apologized. Not because I was wrong. Not because I felt small. But because sometimes, the best way to move forward is to step back just enough for others to reveal themselves. At breakfast, I cleared my throat softly. I've been thinking, I said, about what you both said the other day. My son looked up, startled. My daughter-in-law froze for half a second before smoothing her face. I may have been holding on too tightly, I continued. I don't want to be a burden. Her eyes lit up, just slightly. Oh, Mom, she said quickly, reaching across the table to touch my hand. You're not a burden at all. But her grip was light. Careful. Like someone touching something they had already claimed. I think you're right, I added. Maybe it's time I trusted you two more. My son let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. That means a lot, he said. My daughter-in-law smiled wider than I had ever seen. Inside, I felt something settle. They had taken the bait. After that day, she changed completely. She became confident in a way that was no longer careful. She spoke freely in front of me. She discussed plans openly. She stopped lowering her voice when she talked on the phone. She believed my apology meant surrender. She did not understand that surrender was the last thing I had ever given freely in my life. I listened. I watched. I remembered every detail. She talked about meetings she had scheduled. She talked about documents being prepared. She talked about how everything would be finalized soon. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I heard her say on the phone, "She doesn't question anything anymore. She's finally accepted it." I folded the shirt slowly and smiled to myself. Accepted what? The lie she had created. Or the role she needed me to play. That evening, my son came to my room. He stood awkwardly near the door, like a boy unsure of his place. "I hope you're okay," he said. "Things have been tense." "I am okay," I replied. "Are you?" He hesitated. "She's just trying to plan for the future." "So was your father," I said gently. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. For a moment, I thought he might ask questions. But then he nodded and said, "I trust her." That hurt. Not because he trusted his wife, but because he no longer trusted me. Still, I said nothing. Because truth delivered too early can be ignored. A few days later, she invited someone over. A well-dressed man with a leather folder and a polite smile. "This is just a friend," she said quickly. "He's helping us understand some options." Options. That word again. I served them tea. I sat quietly in the corner. I listened as they spoke over me, around me, as if I were part of the furniture. "This should be simple," the man said. "Once everything is signed." My daughter-in-law interrupted him with a look. I noticed. She was hiding something. When he left, she turned to me with a sweet smile. "I hope you didn't mind." "Of course not," I replied. "I trust you." Her shoulders relaxed. That night, I did not sleep. I replayed every word I had heard. Every detail she had slipped without realizing. She was rushing. And people who rush make mistakes. The next morning, I made a call of my own. A call I had not made in years. The voice on the other end paused when I said my name. "I wondered when you'd reach out," he said. "So did I replied. We spoke quietly, carefully. By the time the call ended, my hands were steady. The path forward was clear. But it would require patience. And courage. Over the following week, I did exactly what she expected of me. I stayed quiet. I agreed when she spoke. I stepped aside when decisions were made. At church, people noticed. "She's really letting go," someone whispered. My daughter-in-law smiled proudly. She enjoyed being seen as the one in charge. Power, when tasted too early, makes people careless. One evening, while cleaning, she made another mistake. She left her phone on the table. A message popped up. I did not intend to read it. But the name caught my eye. And then the words beneath it. My breath caught. This was bigger than I thought. Bigger than disrespect. Bigger than control. This was betrayal. Not just of me. Of my son. Of the memory of my husband. I placed the phone back exactly where it was. My heart ached, but my resolve hardened. This was no longer about teaching her a lesson. This was about protecting what was never meant to be taken. That night, I opened the envelope again. This time, I took out everything. I laid the documents across my bed, reading each line slowly. Each word felt heavier than the last. She thought power came from confidence. She was wrong. Power comes from preparation. And I was finally ready. The next day, she made an announcement at dinner. "Everything is moving forward," she said brightly. "Soon, we won't have to worry about the past anymore." I looked up at her. "Forgetting the past can be dangerous," I said softly. She laughed. "Not when the future is secure." I smiled back. "Sometimes," I replied, "the future depends on secrets people assume are buried." The table went quiet. For the first time, she looked unsure. Just for a second. But it was enough. Because once doubt enters, it never truly leaves. I carried the weight of that message on her phone with me all through the night. I did not confront her. I did not mention it to my son. I did not even let my face change. But inside me, something had shifted forever. Because what I saw was not just planning. It was not just ambition. It was deception. The message was short, but its meaning was heavy. It spoke of dates, signatures, and urgency. It spoke of things being done before she notices. It spoke of relief once. The old woman is out of the way. That last part stayed with me. Out of the way. As if I were an obstacle. As if I were an object. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around me. Every sound felt louder. Every memory felt sharper. I thought of my husband. I thought of how carefully he planned everything. How he trusted few people, but trusted me completely. Beatrice, he once told me, if I am not here one day, remember this. People will smile while reaching for what is not theirs. I finally understood why he had said that. The next morning, I watched her closely. She moved through the house with confidence. She hummed while making tea. She spoke cheerfully to my son, laughing like someone with nothing to fear. And yet, she checked her phone often. Too often. Her confidence was cracking. She was waiting for something. Or someone. At breakfast, she said casually, I might be going out later. Just some errands. My son nodded without looking up. I looked at her and smiled. Drive safely, I said. She paused. Just for a moment. It was the first time my kindness made her uneasy. As soon as she left the house, I moved. Not quickly. Not loudly. Carefully. I went to my room and took out the envelope again. I placed it in my bag, along with another folder I had prepared the night before. Then I made a call. Yes, I said quietly into the phone. Today is fine. There was a pause. Are you sure? The voice asked. I've never been more sure, I replied. When I arrived at the office, the air felt different. Clean. Serious. Like a place where truth mattered. The man who greeted me stood up immediately when he saw me. It's been a long time, Beatrice, he said. Yes, I replied. But some things wait for the right moment. We sat down. I laid the documents on the table, one by one. He read slowly, carefully. His expression changed with each page. She doesn't know any of this, he said finally. No, I replied. And she believes she doesn't need to. He leaned back in his chair. That belief is dangerous. For her, I said. When I returned home, the house was quiet. Too quiet. My daughter-in-law's shoes were by the door, but she was not in the living room. I heard her voice upstairs, low and tense, speaking on the phone. No, it has to be soon, she whispered. I don't want any delays. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. She laughed softly. She's harmless. Trust me. Harmless. I closed my eyes. That word used to hurt me. Now, it fueled me. That evening, she was unusually polite. She offered to help me sit. She asked if I was feeling tired. She even brought me a glass of water. Guilt. Or fear. I could not tell yet. At dinner, she spoke quickly, nervously. I have good news, she announced. Everything is almost settled. My son smiled. That's great. She looked at me, waiting. I nodded slowly. I'm glad, I said. Peace is important. She exhaled, relieved. She thought my peace meant ignorance. She was wrong. Later that night, my son knocked on my door. Can I talk to you? He asked. I gestured for him to come in. He sat down, rubbing his hands together. She says you've been very understanding lately, he said. I appreciate that. I studied his face. My son, I said gently, do you believe everything you're told? He stiffened. What do you mean? I mean, I continued, do you ever wonder why some things are rushed? He frowned. She's just trying to protect us. I nodded. So was your father. That stopped him. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. I'm tired, he finally said. Let's talk another time. As he left, I felt both sadness and hope. The seed had been planted. That night, I received a message of my own. Just 2 words. She signed. I stared at the screen for a long time. Signed what? And more importantly, who was really in control now? I turned off the light and lay back, my heart steady, my mind clear. Because the game had moved into its next stage. And she still believed she was winning. When I woke up the next morning, the house felt different. Not louder. Not quieter. Heavier. It was the kind of heaviness that comes when something important has already happened, even if the people inside the house do not yet understand it. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time, my hands folded in my lap, listening to the sounds of morning. Cups clinking. Footsteps moving quickly. A low voice on the phone. She was excited. Excitement always comes before carelessness. At breakfast, she could not hide her smile. She hummed while pouring tea. She spoke faster than usual. She barely sat still. My son noticed. "You're in a good mood," he said. She laughed. "Just relieved," she replied. "Some things are finally settled." He smiled back, trusting. "That's good." I lifted my cup slowly. "Yes," I said. "Some things are." Her eyes flicked toward me. For the first time, her smile wavered. After breakfast, she left the house again, almost running. I waited until the door closed before standing. Then I went to the small cabinet in my room and pulled out the folder I had placed there the night before. Inside was a copy of the paper she had signed. The one she believed would secure her control. The one she never truly read. I sat down and went through it line by line, even though I already knew every word by heart. She had signed quickly, confidently, without asking questions. That was her mistake. Because that paper did not give her power. It transferred it. The document was not complicated. It did not look threatening. It was written in simple language, almost friendly. It spoke of responsibility, of temporary authority, of trust. But buried inside it, carefully, legally, was a condition. A condition my husband had insisted on many years ago. Any authority granted without full disclosure could be withdrawn instantly by the original holder. That original holder was not my son. It was me. By midday, the phone rang. It was her. Her voice was sharp. "Did you take something from my bag?" "No," I replied calmly. "Why?" There was a pause. "I can't find a copy of the document I signed." "I wouldn't know where it is," I said gently. She ended the call without another word. The first crack had appeared. That afternoon, my son came home early. He looked tired, confused. "She's upset," he said. "She says something's wrong with the paperwork." I nodded. "Is there?" He frowned. "She won't explain clearly." "Did you read what she signed?" I asked. He hesitated. "No." I trusted her. I stood up slowly and walked to my room. When I returned, I placed the folder on the table between us. "Then read this," I said. He opened it. As he read, his face changed. Confusion turned into concern. Concern turned into fear. "Why didn't I know about this?" he asked quietly. "Because you were never meant to worry," I replied. "Your father wanted to protect you." He swallowed hard. "And you?" "I was meant to remember," I said. She came home shortly after. The moment she saw the folder on the table, her face drained of color. "What is this?" she asked sharply. My son looked up at her. "You tell us." She tried to laugh. "This is nothing. Just paperwork." "Then why are you afraid?" I asked. She turned to me, eyes blazing. "You tricked me." I shook my head slowly. "No. You rushed." Her mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time since I had known her, she had no words. She grabbed her bag and stormed out of the room. My son ran after her. Their voices rose upstairs. Accusations. Denials. Anger. I remained seated, calm. Because this was not the end. It was only the beginning of understanding. That evening, my son came back down alone. His eyes were red. "She says you planned this," he said. "I planned protection," I replied. "There is a difference." He sat heavily on the chair. "She wanted everything fast," he whispered. "She said waiting was dangerous." I nodded. Waiting is only dangerous when the truth cannot survive time. He looked at me then, truly seeing me for the first time in years. "I'm sorry," he said. I reached out and held his hand. "I never stopped being your mother," I replied. That night, she did not come home. I did not ask where she went. Because I knew. People run when they realize control is slipping. Before I slept, I placed the document back into the envelope. One piece of the puzzle had moved into place. But there were still others. And she had not yet realized the full cost of underestimating me. She did not come home that night. At first, my son tried to hide his worry. He sat on the couch pretending to watch television, but his eyes kept drifting to the door. Every sound outside made him lift his head. Every passing car slowed his breathing for a moment, then let it fall again. By midnight, he could not pretend anymore. "She's never done this before," he said quietly. I folded my hands in my lap. People act differently when they feel cornered. He looked at me sharply. "Do you think she's in trouble?" "No," I replied. "I think she's thinking." That answer did not comfort him. The next morning, her side of the bed was untouched. Her phone charger still plugged into the wall. Her shoes still missing from the rack. My son called her again and again. No answer. By noon, fear had replaced anger. "I should go look for her," he said. "You should wait," I replied calmly. "Wait for what?" "For her to make her next move," I said. He stared at me, confused. "You sound like you're expecting something bad." I met his eyes. "I'm expecting something honest." She returned late that afternoon. Her makeup was perfect. Her clothes were neat. But her eyes betrayed her. They were tired, sharp, restless. She walked in like nothing had happened. "Oh," she said lightly. "You're both home." My son stood up immediately. "Where were you?" She waved her hand. "I needed space." He stepped closer. "You scared me." She sighed dramatically. "I said I needed space." Then she saw me. And the air changed. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Mom," she said sweetly, "can we talk?" "Of course," I replied. She led me into the kitchen and closed the door behind us. The smile disappeared instantly. "You went behind my back," she hissed. "No," I said softly. "You went around me." She leaned forward. "You made me look foolish." I tilted my head. "You did that yourself when you signed what you did not read." Her face tightened. "You planned this," she snapped. "I planned protection for my family," I replied. "You planned control." Her voice dropped. "You don't understand how the world works anymore." I smiled faintly. "I understand it very well. I just don't rush." That evening, she tried a different approach. She cried. Real tears this time. She told my son she felt attacked. She said she felt unsafe. She said she only wanted stability. He listened. He always had a soft heart. But this time, he asked a question she did not expect. "Why didn't you tell me everything before asking me to trust you?" he said. She froze. "I was protecting you," she replied quickly. He shook his head. "No. You were protecting yourself." Silence filled the room. I watched without speaking. This was his moment. That night, I heard her on the phone again. This time, she was not whispering. "No, you promised me this would work," she said urgently. "I did everything you said." There was a pause. Her voice rose. "What do you mean there's nothing you can do?" I leaned back against my door, listening. She lowered her voice again. Then I'll fix it myself. The line went dead. I straightened slowly. That was the sound of desperation turning into action. The next morning, she packed a bag. I'm going to stay with a friend, she announced. My son looked torn. For how long? I don't know, she replied. She turned to me. You win, she said quietly. Are you happy now? I met her gaze. This was never a game. She scoffed and walked out. The door closed behind her. Hard. 3 days passed. No calls. No messages. My son barely slept. On the 4th day, a letter arrived. Not for him. For me. The handwriting was neat. Careful. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. It asked for a meeting. Not a discussion. Not an argument. A meeting. At a place she chose. At a time she set. I folded the letter and placed it on the table. My son watched me nervously. Are you going? He asked. Yes, I replied. Why? Because when people ask for meetings instead of forgiveness, I said, they are planning something. That night, I prepared. I reviewed every document. I made every call. I left nothing to chance. Because desperation does not always lead to surrender. Sometimes, it leads to recklessness. And recklessness can hurt everyone. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something important. She had stopped trying to convince us. She was now trying to outmaneuver me. And that meant the situation had become dangerous. Not just for her, but for my son. For the family. For everything my husband had tried to protect. I picked up my phone and sent a single message. I will be there. Then I turned off the light. Because the next day would decide everything. The place she chose told me everything I needed to know. It was not a cafe. Not a public office. Not even a church. It was a quiet building on the edge of town. Clean on the outside, cold on the inside. A place where people came to sign things, not to speak their hearts. I arrived early. That is something my husband taught me long ago. Never arrive late when power is involved. Lateness gives others time to control the story. I sat in the waiting area with my hands folded neatly in my lap, my bag resting at my feet. Around me, people whispered, shuffled papers, avoided eye contact. Everyone seemed nervous. Everyone except me. Because I already knew why I was there. She arrived 10 minutes late. On purpose. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor, announcing her presence before I even looked up. She wore confidence like armor. Perfect hair, sharp dress, chin held high. But I saw past it. Her eyes flicked around the room first. Checking who was watching. Who was listening. When she sat across from me, she smiled tightly. I'm glad you came, she said. So am I replied. She leaned forward. I want us to clear the air. Then speak clearly, I said. Her smile faded. She started softly. She talked about misunderstandings. About stress. About how families sometimes hurt each other without meaning to. I never wanted things to go this far, she said, shaking her head. I just wanted security. For whom? I asked. For all of us, she replied quickly. I waited. Silence makes people uncomfortable. It makes them fill the space with truth. She sighed. You have to understand. I was afraid. Of what? I asked. She hesitated. Of being left with nothing. I nodded slowly. Fear explains behavior, I said. But it does not excuse betrayal. Her jaw tightened. Then she changed tactics. I spoke to someone, she said carefully. They believe there are ways to challenge what you think you control. I smiled gently. Did they read everything? I asked. She looked away. That told me enough. She placed a folder on the table and slid it toward me. This could make things easier, she said. For everyone. I did not open it. What does easier mean? I asked. She exhaled sharply. It means compromise. Compromise requires honesty, I replied. You have not offered that. Her voice rose. You're holding this family hostage. I leaned forward slightly. No, I said calmly. I am holding it together. People nearby glanced in our direction. She lowered her voice again. I know you think you're strong, she whispered. But you're alone in this. I looked at her steadily. I have never been alone, I said. I simply stopped announcing my strength. That was when her confidence finally cracked. Her hands trembled as she reached for her water. She stood up suddenly. If you don't agree to this, she said, things will get ugly. I remained seated. They already did, I replied. She stared at me, breathing hard. You think you've won, she said. I think, I corrected gently, that you misjudged who you were dealing with. She left without another word. Did not shake my hand. Did not look back. As the door closed behind her, I felt something heavy lift from my chest. But I did not feel relief. Because people who threaten instead of negotiate rarely stop there. When I returned home, my son was waiting. He stood as soon as I walked in. Did she say anything? He asked. Yes, I replied. Enough. He swallowed. Is it over? I looked at him sadly. No, I said. Now it becomes public. His face drained of color. What does that mean? It means, I said softly, she's going to force my hand. That night, I received another message. Not from her. From someone else. Someone whose name I had not seen in years. It was short, urgent, and deeply troubling. She's trying to move assets she doesn't own. I closed my eyes. So this was her final move. I went to my room and opened the envelope one last time. I removed a document I had hoped never to use. My husband's final safeguard. The one designed for moments exactly like this. I traced his signature with my finger. You always knew, I whispered. The game was no longer private. The next step would expose everything. And once that happened, there would be no going back. I did not sleep that night. Sleep requires peace, and peace was no longer an option. I sat by the window until dawn, watching the streetlights fade one by one as morning crept in. In my hands was the final document my husband had prepared, the one he prayed would never be needed. The safeguard. He had called it, the last door. If anyone ever tries to take what is not theirs, he once told me, this door closes everything behind them. At the time, I thought he was being overly cautious. Now, I realized he had been merciful. By sunrise, the phone calls began. One after another. Voices tight. Words rushed. Questions filled with panic. She's been making inquiries. She tried to authorize a transfer. She claimed she had approval. Approval. From whom? Certainly not from me. By mid-morning, I knew something important. She was not trying to win anymore. She was trying to escape. My son sat across from me at the table, his face pale. They called my office, he said quietly, asking questions about things I didn't even know existed. I folded my hands. That is how lies collapse, I said. They pull innocent people into their weight. He looked up sharply. Are you saying she lied to me? I met his eyes. I am saying, I replied gently, that you were never meant to see the whole picture. He leaned back, shaking his head. I defended her, he whispered. I chose her over you. I reached across the table and took his hand. You chose love, I said. She chose leverage. There is a difference. That afternoon, she called. Not angry. Not crying. Calm. Too calm. I think we should talk again, she said. Privately. We already did, I replied. This is different, she insisted. This time, I'm being honest. Honesty that arrives only when options are gone is not honesty. It is surrender disguised as control. I will listen, I said. But I will not bend. There was silence on the line. Then she said, "You're forcing me into a corner." "No," I replied. "You walked into it." She hung up. An hour later, a stranger came to the house. A man in a neat suit, holding a folder. "I'm here regarding some urgent concerns," he said. I did not invite him inside. I already knew what this was. She had escalated. She had tried to use authority. She did not have to create pressure. A dangerous move. I handed him a copy of the document. The safeguard. He read it twice. Then a third time. His face changed completely. "I'll be in touch," he said quietly. And just like that, the ground beneath her plan disappeared. That evening, my son finally broke. He sat on the edge of the couch, his head in his hands. "She lied to me," he said again and again. All this time. I sat beside him. "She believed control mattered more than truth," I said softly. "And now she is learning what truth costs." He looked up at me, eyes filled with pain. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you would not have believed me," I replied. "And because I hoped she would stop." He nodded slowly. "She won't stop," he said. "No," I agreed. "She won't." That night, she sent me one final message. It was not long. It was not polite. It was a warning. "If you go through with this, I will make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are." I read it carefully. Then I deleted it. Because people who threaten exposure are often the most afraid of it themselves. I opened my bag and took out the last envelope. Inside was a list. Names. Dates. Proof. Things I had hoped would stay buried. Things my husband had documented quietly, patiently, over years. This was no longer about family conflict. This was about accountability. And accountability does not ask permission. I looked at the clock. Tomorrow, I would take the final step. Not to punish. Not to embarrass. But to end the illusion she had built her power on. Because once illusions collapse, there is nothing left to hide behind. And she was running out of places to stand. The morning arrived quietly. Too quietly. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm, when even the air seems to be holding its breath. I dressed slowly, choosing simple clothes, nothing that drew attention. This was not a day for appearances. It was a day for truth. My son watched me from the doorway. "Is this really happening?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "And once it begins, it cannot be stopped." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Will she be there?" "She will have no choice," I said. The building was full when we arrived. Not just family. Not just professionals. People whose lives touched the edges of what she had tried to manipulate. I recognized faces from years past. Some looked confused. Others already looked afraid. She arrived last. As always. Her confidence was still there, but it was thin now, stretched too tight. She avoided my eyes. That told me everything. When the meeting began, voices overlapped. Questions were asked. Explanations attempted. Denials offered. I waited. Because truth does not rush. It stands still and lets lies trip over it. Finally, I stood. The room quieted. I placed the documents on the table. "I am not here to accuse," I said calmly. "I am here to clarify." She shifted in her seat. I continued. "These records show attempts to act without authority. To transfer, to commit, to decide things that did not belong to one person alone." Someone interrupted. "Are you saying she acted illegally?" I looked directly at her. "I am saying," I replied, "that she acted without consent." Her breath caught. That was the moment her mask slipped. She stood suddenly. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "She's manipulating all of you." I did not raise my voice. "I have no need to manipulate," I said. "I have records." I slid the list across the table. Names were read. Dates confirmed. Her story began to unravel. My son spoke then. His voice shook, but it was strong. "She told me I didn't need to know," he said. "She said she was protecting us." The room turned toward her. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence that followed was heavy, unforgiving. One by one, the people in the room realized the same thing. They had been misled. Not out of kindness, but out of convenience. That realization is always painful. She looked at me then. Not with anger. With fear. "You planned this," she whispered. I met her gaze. "No," I replied. "You did." The meeting ended with decisions made. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Firmly. Authority was revoked. Actions were frozen. Oversight was restored. The power she thought she held vanished quietly. Just as quietly as it had been taken. Outside, my son stood beside me, shaking. "It's over," he said. "No," I replied softly. "It's revealed. There is a difference." She walked past us without a word. Her shoulders were tight. Her steps unsteady. She did not look back. I did not stop her. Because the hardest part of truth is living with it afterward. As we drove home, my son finally asked the question he had been holding back. "Why didn't you ever fight back sooner?" I looked out the window. "Because fighting creates noise," I said. "And noise gives liars places to hide." He nodded slowly. That evening, the house felt different. Not heavier. Lighter. But not healed. Healing would take time. Truth always leaves a mess behind. I placed the envelope back in its drawer. For the first time, my hands did not shake. But as I turned off the light, I knew one thing for certain. This was not the end. Because exposure does not erase consequences. And consequences were still waiting. The house was quiet the morning after everything ended. Not the uncomfortable silence we had lived with for months. Not the tense quiet filled with secrets and fear. This was different. This was the sound of truth settling. I woke early and sat in the living room, the same place where she once laughed and told me I no longer decided anything. Sunlight poured through the window, resting gently on the floor as if the house itself was breathing again. For the first time in a long while, my chest felt light. My son joined me a few minutes later. He looked older than he had just days before. Truth does that. It ages you quickly, but it also clears your eyes. "I didn't sleep," he said quietly. "Neither did I replied. He sat across from me, his hands clasped together. "I keep thinking about everything," he said. "All the signs I ignored." "You ignored them because you trusted," I said gently. "That is not weakness." He nodded, tears filling his eyes. "She thought you were powerless," he whispered. I smiled faintly. She thought power was loud. Later that day, the call came. The one I knew would come. Her name flashed on my phone. I did not rush to answer. When I finally did, her voice sounded different. Smaller. "I didn't know," she said quickly. "I swear. I didn't know you were the one. The one holding the power." I finished calmly. Silence. "I thought you were just tired," she said. "I was patient," I replied. "There is a difference." Her voice cracked. "I lost everything." I closed my eyes for a moment. "No," I said softly. "You lost control. What you lost after that came from your own choices." She began to cry. Not loudly. Not dramatically. The cry of someone who finally understands too late. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered. "Intent does not erase impact," I said. And manipulation always demands payment. She did not argue, because there was nothing left to argue. That evening, she came to the house one last time. Not to fight. Not to threaten. To pack. She moved slowly, carefully, like someone afraid of breaking what was already shattered. When she reached the door, she stopped. She turned to me and said quietly, "I thought you were a fool." I met her eyes. "And now?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "Now I know better." She left without another word. The door closed gently behind her. My son stood beside me for a long time. "I should have protected you," he said. I placed my hand on his arm. "You did today," I replied, "by choosing truth." He nodded, tears finally falling. "I won't forget this," he said. "Good," I replied. "Neither will I." That night, I returned the envelope to its place for the final time. I did not need it anymore. The power it held was never really in the papers. It was in patience, in silence, in knowing when to speak, and when to wait. She thought I was a fool because I did not fight loudly. She was wrong. I was watching. I was waiting. And when the moment came, I stood. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that quiet strength is still strength, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you never miss stories like this. Also, tell us in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought you were powerless? What country are you watching from? Your voice matters. Your story matters. Because sometimes, the people everyone overlooks are the ones holding the power all along.